Anxiety and fear, such unpleasant emotion. In my life I experienced anxiety and fear many times. And I always would have loved to have a tool to take control of this emotion and use it, drive it in the direction which is more useful for my aims. In this video, we're talking about it. I'm Valerio Verrea, this is Tarology Academy, where we use the archetypes behind traditional tarots in order to help you to understand better your process and give energy to your self-realization in work, in relationship, and live a more fulfilling life. If you want to know more about this, you find all the links in the description. Anxiety has always been something that I disliked. I'm a relatively anxious person and I had to work a lot about it. Especially about those kind of situations in which anxiety was something hindering, limiting my life. Actually, anxiety and fear are useful emotions. When we feel fear of anxiety, adrenaline is produced inside of ourselves, and this activates all the body and helps us to be more focused. This is actually useful because in a moment of risk, we can focus all our energy to face the risk and be successful. But often there is a problem because nowadays the situations which activate anxiety and fear inside of ourselves are often not rational, not reasonable. We feel a lot of anxiety for something that actually they're not so dangerous. And this we need to reprogram. But first, let's go to understand how we did learn about anxiety and fear. Anxiety and fear is something that we learned. We learned in our childhood. And we learned it in two different ways. Directly, so we had experiences which were traumatic. For example, I was bitten by an animal and then I developed anxiety and fear about this animal. I was falling from somewhere and then I am afraid of falling, or maybe afraid to be in some higher places, or other fears which comes from a direct experience. But this actually is the smaller part of our learning process about anxiety. The most that we learn is actually in an indirect way. So we learn watching. As humans, we can learn from others. So every time that we were watching, seeing our parents doing something, having fear or being in an anxious state about something, we learn that. And we learn that that situation is something that should generate anxiety inside of ourselves. And as well, every time that we experience situation of invasion, like violence, of manipulation, as well, this could have triggered processes of anxiety and fear inside of ourselves. We can even have transgenerational fear and anxiety. Maybe we can feel like a fear of starving, even though in our society this is not an actual risk, but we have the memory because maybe somebody in some generation before was living that. And because there was this information in our field which have been learned and passed through generation to generation, this arrived to us and we can feel that anxiety and that fear even though today there is not the risk. Then we can have fear of abandonment, and this can come from the very early moments of our life. When we were born, if we were taken away from our mother, this could have created a stress, a trauma, and activate a fear of abandonment inside of ourselves, which then can be very easily activated in a relationship and can trigger feelings like jealousy nowadays. And then we can have anxiety when we need to perform. And this can happen if in our childhood we had very high standards, if there was a process of adultization and we were asked to do things which were too difficult for us. And nowadays we can feel every situation as something which is like triggering fear and anxiety because we need to perform always more than what we feel we can do. And then we have fears which are actually on something which is not the real object of the fear, which is a projection of the real fear. This happens, for example, when we have fears which are not rational. We can imagine like a fear of insects, fear of spiders, fear of open spaces. All these things, they are not really dangerous, but something inside of our mind, inside of our subconscious is connecting this object with some fear, with some traumas that we lived in our childhood. Maybe we experience violence, maybe we experience some kind of manipulation, invasion and so on, and our mind doesn't see that and then project the fear on the other object. And then we have fear of something different, insects and so on. So this project, and this is quite complicated thing, but it's very important to recognize it, because this gives us the tool to overcome it. Because when we are adult and we have fears which are not rational and which limit our freedom and our life, then we need to go and reprogram it. This is very important. And how to do it? First of all, you need to realize what is triggering. So the visible trigger of anxiety and fear. You can do it like journaling and writing down what is the trigger and what is the experience. So, okay, I felt anxiety, this and this happened, and the connection. What is the connection? And bring it to clear visibility for your eyes in front of you. Make it as visible as possible. Then, second, we need to go and understand what is behind that. So what is the experience, what is the trauma, what is the subconscious connection between what you are living in a certain moment and what was there before. So what happened, what's the trauma that maybe has been lived in childhood, then generated the fear. And especially when the thing is a bit more complex, like in case of projection, it's very useful to have professional support in that. And tarology, like a tarological consultation done with archetypes, can be very useful in this process to give in different point of view and bringing light on these hidden connections. And number 3, we need to reprogram. We need to reprogram the experience that generated the fear, which lives in our memory, with something different. And we can do that through experience. We need to generate transformative experiences. And this is exactly what we do in family constellation. We create a situation in which we can live physically, with our body, with our mind, 360 degrees, something different. And this something different can reprogram, can change the way that we do. We can change the way that we feel emotion and how we are activated. And in this way, we can bring harmony again. Because of course we know fear and anxiety is not bad, but we need to control it. We need to be the driver and not to be driven by our emotions. And in this way, we can do it. It's very effective and actually also relatively fast. But it needs some commitment and some energy, because we need, of course, to go deep inside of ourselves and have the courage to go to see those traumatic events and change them. So this is the path, this is where we need to go to change and become the drivers of our field. I hope this video is useful for you. If you like, share it, put a like, subscribe the channel. It's very important, your support, to keep growing this channel and bring to more people this knowledge for free here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.